All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tasha Seiter. I'm a couples therapist in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I'm here today to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, and that is emotionally focused therapy, or emotionally focused couples therapy. So this is a method of couples therapy that is very evidence-based, developed by research, validated by research, and it actually has a 90% effectiveness rate with couples, which is pretty incredible. Thinking about all of the things that a relationship can have going on within it, right? It's pretty amazing that I think that we have a method that has been developed that helps couples feel closer, helps couples move through conflict. And so I love this couples therapy method so much, and I'm so excited to talk about it today. So thank you so much for having me on to Mind's Journal. So short little history lesson of couples therapy, and that modality in general. When couples therapy started, it was back in the 1980s. They would have a couple come to a room, and there'd be a professional sitting there, and they would just kind of guess at what they thought would help the couple have a better relationship. They thought maybe active listening. That seemed like it should help, right? Having somebody sit down and listen to your partner and really tune in and then paraphrase back what they say. That should be helpful, right? I mean, you never really know until you do the research on it, right? So there was an incredible researcher. His name is John Gottman, and he's still doing amazing things today, married to Julie Gottman, who's also a therapist. And he wanted to really understand and break couples therapy down to a science. What is actually helping these couples and what is not helping these couples? And so he studied some things. Active listening. Is that helpful? If you study that in terms of you have couples go through an intervention of active listening and they do this for a while, does their relationship get better? Is it helpful? John Gottman studied some of that, and he found that some things that we think are going to be helpful are not helpful. So things like active listening, it's actually not an effective method for improving relationships. Sitting there, listening to what your partner's saying, paraphrasing back. I'm not going to say it's harmful, but it's not an evidence-based method that you can really get some incredible things when you go to a therapist who's highly trained in emotionally focused therapy. So, all right, research shows active listening, not so helpful. John Gottman, he studied a lot of other things. He had newlyweds come into a lab, and he videotaped them interacting right when they first got married, and then he followed them for 12 years. And he saw who was together in a happy relationship, who was not together, and who was together, but they were really struggling in their relationship. They're not really having a great time in their relationship. And those people who were happy in their relationship, he called those the masters of relationships. They had some things in common. They had some communication skills in common. Most notably, what he calls the 4 horsemen. So the masters did not do these 4 horsemen, these bad things. The disasters, they did. They're more likely to get divorced. They're more likely to have unhealthy relationships years later. So there's a predictive quality of these communication techniques. They're not coinciding with these negative outcomes. They're actually predicting them, meaning that they come first. The communication skills have an effect rather than being an effect of an unhealthy relationship. They affect the relationship in a way that makes them unhealthy. So he found 4 really significant things, the 4 horsemen. First one is, how is the conversation started? Is it started with criticism, or is it started in a soft, gentle, kind way? Second one is defensiveness, which I see as a reaction to criticism. That's a part of a dynamic that happens when we feel criticized, we get defensive. And so that was another 4 horsemen. Next one is stonewalling. If there's just complete shutting off, that's a bad sign, not engaging in the conversation. And then the last one is contempt. If there's just this attitude of, it's like an eye roll. I just want to roll my eyes, a scoff, that kind of thing. That was the most predictive of divorce or low marital quality later on. So he saw these behaviors. He sees that they have an effect on the relationship over time. And this is part of how behavioral couples therapy was born. Or I guess I should say how it was refined. Behavioral couples therapy started with things like active listening. John Gottman came in and he figured out the nitty-gritty of behavioral couples therapy. So this communication, if you change the way that couples communicate, you should be able to change the outcome of that relationship, right? Like if you intervene in those newlyweds years down the line, you tell them criticism's bad, don't do criticism, don't do stonewalling, these are all bad things, don't do them. That is what behavioral couples therapy is all about, right? Is coming in and saying, don't do these negative communication skills, do these positive communication skills. There's a problem with that though. And I'm guessing maybe you know what it is. You already know what is good and what is bad communication. Like we all do. You know that criticizing somebody's not good. Who doesn't know that? Everybody knows that you shouldn't criticize people. You should engage in the conversation. You shouldn't shut down. You shouldn't stonewall. You shouldn't get defensive. You definitely shouldn't do contempt. Everybody knows that. But there's a reason that we do these things. And it goes deeper than somebody coming in the room and saying, hey, criticism, stop doing that. Do this instead. When you try to do that, do you know what happens is the couple goes home and they do it all over again. They do the criticism. They do the defensiveness. They know it's not good. They still do it. And there's a reason for that. And that is that it's coming from a nervous system state. When we are going to a place of being critical, going to a place where we shut down and we can't engage in the conversation anymore, going to a place of contempt or defensiveness. These are all things that happen when we don't feel safe, when we feel that we are under threat. And do you know what causes feelings of threat and feelings of lack of safety? Are when our relationship feels threatened. That registers in the brain like a serious threat to our very survival, our very ability to survive. Our brain says, oh no, I'm not connected. Oh no, I'm not safe. We go into fight or flight. And maybe that looks like fight, criticism. Maybe it looks like flight, stonewalling. And no matter how much a couples therapist sits there and tells you to stop doing that, you're not going to stop because you're in a nervous system state. And there's a reason that you're doing it. And so EFT, or emotionally focused therapy, the method that we're talking about today, it goes beyond the behavioral. Instead of just teaching people communication skills, it goes much deeper, and the research shows that it's more effective than behavioral methods. So what EFT does, well, first of all, going back to our little history lesson. So in this inquiry, this rigorous research about what makes couples therapy effective, there was a wonderful woman. Her name was Sue Johnson. She just passed away last year. She was an incredible person. And she developed emotionally focused therapy. So what she started doing is watching tapes. She worked in a university in Canada, watching tapes of couples therapy sessions and trying to figure out what was it about the sessions that were effective? What made them effective? And it wasn't sitting there and telling people that they were criticizing and to stop doing that, or stonewalling and don't do that. It was these moments that were bonding moments that changed the way that people related. And so what is a bonding moment? It's a moment in your relationship when you feel safe and connected. And I think there's two ingredients to that. One is vulnerability. The speaker shares from the heart. Instead of being critical or being defensive, or just shutting off and not sharing anything, they share from the heart. They share about what's really going on. And oftentimes we don't do that because we're in our nervous system reactions. We don't even really know what's going on. But underneath every secondary, we call them secondary emotions, anger, numbness is a secondary emotion. Underneath those emotions, there's a deeper primary emotion like hurt, fear, or sadness. So let's take an example. Let's say that you and your partner go to a social event, and your partner is there and they're chatting it up with someone else of the opposite sex. And you start to feel jealous inside. How do you react? You might, if you're just straight to fight or flight, you might react with maybe let's say you go to the side where you're going to be critical. You go to your partner and you say, oh, can you believe I can't even believe that you're talking to her like that. You are so this, you are so that, right? What's the response that you're going to get to that? Probably not a great one. You're probably going to get one that is like, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? It was just a friendly thing, defensiveness. And then you see you're caught in a pattern. They're defensive. No, there was something weird happening there. There really was. There's like this doubling down and this defensiveness. And this is what happens is people just get stuck in these patterns of nervous system reactions. And they don't get out unless they do something different. They don't get out unless they learn how to communicate in a different way. And in EFT, you learn how to communicate in a different way, not by forcing some kind of response that you don't really want to do, like, no criticism. Okay, I guess I'll try to say something nice. That's not what you do. In EFT, you develop a greater sense of awareness around what you're actually feeling. In that moment, when you saw your partner talking to that member of the opposite sex, you had a pang of hurt and a feeling of fear. That doesn't get talked about. But what EFT helps you do is it helps you hone in on those primary emotions of hurt, of fear, of sadness, and learn how to share from a more vulnerable place rather than going to a place where there's criticism or a lack of sharing that needs to happen for things to resolve. You learn in EFT how to become more aware of your own feelings so that you can share them with your partner. And when you share these more primary feelings, when you can say to your partner, instead of going up to them and accusing them, you can say to your partner, hey, I want to share something with you. I felt kind of scared in that moment. Can you help me? That makes a huge difference. The partner can say, oh my gosh, I never wanted to make you feel afraid. Tell me more about what happened and how I can make it better. So EFT, I could go on and on about this, but there's a couple of different stages of EFT. The first stage is called de-escalation. So this one is all about reducing negative cycles. So first of all, understanding what is that negative cycle that you two are caught in. And then it's about understanding, okay, it's understanding a little bit more. What was happening for you deep down underneath? Let's do a little bit of a scuba dive down to what you were actually feeling, this hurt, fear, and sadness. Okay, now share that with your partner. And then we do reps. We just do that, and it's a corrective emotional experience. And you learn through the experience of being in the room, doing it in this safe environment. You learn that it's safe to do, and your body learns it. And so when people go through the first stage of EFT, what they end up feeling is like, okay, we're just not fighting as much. I mean, and it's not because I'm telling myself, no, don't criticize, finger wagging. It's because I don't feel like fighting. I just feel kind of safe. I just feel more safe. Like I'm not going into fight or flight as much. I just don't feel as threatened. So that's what you'll feel after the first stage. When that is established, the pattern is starting to look more positive and less negative. That's when you go even deeper. So stage 2 is all about recognizing what are these deep rooted, vulnerable feelings and needs that you have, that you want to be accepted by your partner, but you're scared to share. Now that there's a lot more safety in the relationship after moving through stage 1, you can go to stage 2 and share these vulnerable parts of yourself, these deeper attachment needs that you have, needs to feel like you matter, needs to feel accepted, needs to feel loved. You can share those things and you can ask for them to be met, because that's what these core issues are about. It's never about the person at the party. What it's really about is, can you tell me that I matter to you? You tell me that I'm the person you want to be with. So once there's safety, that's a scary thing to do. And that's why we don't jump into it immediately. There needs to be safety first. And so in stage 2, we can identify what are those core needs that need to be met. How do you ask for those things to be met? Now there's more safety here. And now when you're in stage 2, you're to a point where the partner has developed all of this empathy, and they can hear those needs, and they can say, of course you matter to me. Of course, I want to show you that. And so there's a natural pull for empathy and compassion when vulnerability is shared in that safe environment and when safety has been built. So this is extremely transformative for couples. And not only does it reduce arguments, conflict, people come to EFT and leave feeling more connected than they've ever felt, even at the very beginning. And they learn through repetition and these corrective emotional experiences that they can share their true feelings and they will be responded to. There's also a learning about how to respond to your partner. There's a learning about that doesn't come from coaching, like a behavioral couples therapy method, but comes from a felt sense in the body of, I want to be there for you. When we have safety, that's what we want to do. When we have safety, we want to be there for the people that we love. Something gets in the way when we're stuck in a pattern. And that's what EFT is all about, is fighting that pattern, making sure that you're not fighting your partner, but you're fighting the pattern, the cycle. And so stage 3 of EFT is called consolidation. And that is when you take this new sense of safety, this new way of being in your relationship where you just feel better and you end up communicating better, but it's not because you're even trying. It's because you feel happier in the relationship. You feel better towards your partner. You feel more valued. You feel like your emotional needs are being met. And so you want to give back. That's when you get into a positive cycle where both people want to give to the other one. And that's how you get a good relationship. I mean, plain and simple. So stage 3 is all about, how do we address the problems that we were struggling with before from this new place in our relationship? And what couples find is that the things that they were fighting about before, like, are not such a big deal when they have a felt sense of safety and a felt sense of, I'm cared about. They got my back. Yeah. Right. So the result of EFT is going beyond less fighting and things like that. It goes way beyond that. It's the goal is secure attachment. And so what that really means is that the goal is creating a relationship that feels like a safe haven from the outside world, that is not a source of stress, as can be the case for many couples when they end up coming to couples therapy. It's a safe haven from all the stresses of the world. So it's a place that you can come home from a stressful day and you can lean on your partner and you can know that you are valued and understood. I think that there's a piece of research that Sue Johnson, the developer of emotionally focused couples therapy, did that was pretty incredible. So she had women come into a lab and they experienced a mild electric shock, which was reported as painful. So she had them come in right at the beginning of couples therapy when they were reporting levels of relationship distress. And they came in solo, saw the reaction to the pain in the brain, and then with the husband at the beginning of couples therapy, holding hands with the husband. And what they found is that pain reaction was similar in the brain between the two conditions at the beginning. So condition one is going in there alone and holding the hands of the partner where they were struggling in their relationship. However, after a course of EFT, so going through 12 sessions of emotionally focused therapy, what she found in her research is that this time when the women were holding the hand of their partner, the pain response was significantly reduced from holding the partner's hand because they had gone through this journey together of creating safety in their relationship. And so what this means is that when we have that sense of safety in our relationship, it can make everything feel safer. It can help us get through all the stresses of the outside world, whether that's some kind of physical pain, like in this research, or maybe it's just work stress, or something happening in another area of your life, in your friendship, something like that. When we have that safety in a relationship, that secure attachment, it's incredible. It's life-changing. Doesn't just change the relationship in beautiful ways, but it changes your whole life, and it makes everything feel easier when you feel a strong sense of support in your life. So I think that's all I want to say. Love to go to questions. I also want to say I talk a lot about this on my Instagram. So if you do want to give me a follow, my Instagram is at Dr. So that's just Dr. Tasha.relationship.therapy. Or you can also find me on Facebook. It's just Dr. Tasha Seiter, MS, PhD, LMFT, I think. So with that, I'd love to hear some of your questions. Why do so many relationships lose that spark or connection over time? Is that just normal? Yeah, really good question. Is it normal? Maybe. It might be normal in the sense that it happens quite a lot. Does it have to happen? Absolutely not. It happens oftentimes because we're stuck in one of these patterns of the nervous system responses that I was talking about. And specifically, patterns are all about either going to fight or flight, and there's like a combination of the two of these. So this is one thing I gave my talk on earlier this year. That was a lot of fun. But some people, where they go is flight. And when you're doing your flight nervous system response in a relationship, it means that you're turning away. You're not turning towards your partner and sharing things. And no wonder the spark fades out when that's happening, right? Like the reason that in the beginning of a relationship, oftentimes we feel that sense of closeness and connection and we can't get enough of each other is we are giving each other a lot of attention. You're getting a lot of attention from that person and that lights you up inside. So you want to give it back. That starts to fade over time when life gets busy and stress happens. Stressors within the relationship, stressors from outside of the relationship happen. And there's not as much of that turning toward and giving that kind of attention that how this relates to EFT, that's the kind of attention that we want to give to each other. It's attention that is present, loving, tender. When we're not doing that, it's no wonder that the spark fades over time. So, yeah, it might be common, but it absolutely doesn't have to happen. I think many people, when they come in for couples therapy after they learn to communicate in this new way, they feel more of a spark than they ever have. It's pretty incredible. So thanks for that question. We rarely fight, but we also are not as close as we used to be. Should we be worried? So similar to this pattern, when two people tend to go to a flight response of, when I get stressed out, I turn away from the relationship. That might look like I don't talk about hard things. I get my needs met with my friends instead of turning towards the relationship. When things like that are happening over time, you might just not feel as close. So to feel close, what you really want is to learn how to share from the heart. Share your vulnerable parts. Share the parts of you that you are afraid to share, afraid to show. It's an emotional risk. It's very, very scary. And that's why it takes safety to do it. So it's a little bit of this thing that, it's the chicken or the egg. You need safety to share your vulnerable parts, but you need to share your vulnerable parts to feel safety, right? So how do you work with that paradox? You do it little by little. You share a little bit of vulnerability, and you hope that you get an engaged and compassionate response back. And when you do, you feel safe to share a little bit more. And that's how you build closeness over time. So my biggest tips for that are learn how to share vulnerably. And if you're on the receiving end of that vulnerability, make sure that you receive that vulnerability like it is a beautiful gift, because it is. It's a gift. And so take it as a gift. There's all sorts of reactions that we can't have to vulnerability. And that's one fun thing about EFT for me, is slicing those reactions thinner. What keeps you from being able to be responsive to your partner in this moment? So, yes, good question. Thank you. Can EFT really help if both partners love each other but just can't seem to understand each other anymore? Yes. Oh yeah, 100%. Because EFT is all about understanding. That's one thing I love about it, is couples come in and they're like, I get it. I get what was happening. I thought this was about something completely different. I thought this was about the girl at the party, right? They finally come in and start to understand, what is this really about? And then they stop having the same fight over and over and over and over again, because they get to the root of it and they resolve it. Basically, getting to the root of it is figuring out what is that core attachment need, like those core attachment fears, and learning to share those in a vulnerable way, and learning how to respond to them in a responsive and engaged way. So EFT is amazing if you want to understand each other better. You'll probably even leave understanding yourself better. So that's a good question. Thank you. Is emotional distance just a phase or something deeper? It is not a phase. Yes, most relationships are not just peachy all the time. And even couples who have great relationships go through hard times where maybe they don't feel close. There's just too much going on. They don't have the time to turn towards each other and give them that kind of nourishing attention that is needed to have a close emotional connection. The but it's a result of a cycle and a pattern. I'm interested in this phrase, is it something deeper? Because really emotional distance is about something deeper not being shared. It's about not connecting on the vulnerable, deep stuff and just doing the easy thing, which is like not talking about the tough things. So EFT can help that by helping you understand what is the pattern that you're caught in, and then getting you to a place where there's enough safety to share. It's different from behavioral couples therapy because there's not coaching. It's more of guiding, like guiding a corrective emotional experience. It's an experiential method. So EFT can help get to the root of what the core issue is and help you get to a place where you feel close again. So thanks for that question too. Does EFT work even if one person is skeptical about therapy or not emotional? Yes, it does. One thing that is very interesting for me as a therapist is when somebody comes in and they say, I don't know if I want to be here. Or they say, yeah, I'm not an emotional person. It makes me get really curious, and I get to really understand not only that person's sense of self, but how they regulate their emotions, because every person on the planet has emotions. Sometimes we learn how to shut them off before we feel them. And that's actually very, very common. It's incredibly common with clients that I see in EFT. And so I love getting that person in the room and being able to slow things down with them and start to dig into, what is this emotional process? Before you feel numb, there's something there, but you shut it off. You've learned to shut it off. What happens before that? And it's really interesting. So the answer is yes to that. Thank you. My wife and I barely touch anymore. No hugs, no cuddles, no spark. How do you bring back physical closeness when it feels awkward now? So common. You're not alone with that. It's heartbreaking nonetheless, though. And this is a pattern that's taken over, where it's happened slowly over time. Started to kind of fade slowly with one person. The other person didn't feel like it was comfortable anymore, so they stopped doing it. This person started turning away more too, then this person turned away more too, and it just started to like snowball over time. So bringing it back, there needs to be this incremental positive cycle where it doesn't happen completely overnight, because it didn't happen overnight, the snowball effect. But when you create a positive cycle that is characterized by more safety and more emotional intimacy, you naturally feel more comfortable giving that touch, receiving that touch. And that's really what that awkwardness is not feeling comfortable giving or receiving that touch, because it feels like vulnerable and feels like, oh, is this going to be welcome? Is this not going to be welcome? And so I would absolutely recommend going to see an EFT couples therapist who can help you learn how to understand your pattern. And the lack of affection is a huge part of it. Understand your pattern and the underlying feelings so that you two can start to learn how to share those underlying feelings through having these corrective emotional experiences and building this safety. And then it will start to feel natural over time. So thanks for that question. How long does it usually take before couples start noticing a difference with EFT? Yeah, so noticing a difference. The first session, you should ideally leave with a sense of hope, having gone through the method and just one session of it. And you're not going to experience like overnight change, but you should leave with a sense of hope, like, okay, I get this. I get how this can work. You might start noticing a difference after 3 or 4 sessions. And if you can go through 12, that is absolutely, that is where the research, this 90% number that they have 90% of couples improving after EFT couples therapy is 12 sessions, going through 12 sessions. But you'll start noticing a difference before that. So thank you. Can EFT be applied for post-conflict repair? Yes. Ruptures happen. They happen to everybody. It's actually a part of secure attachment is rupture and repair. That's a part of really building a secure attachment is going through a relationship rupture and then having a repair conversation. So what does repair look like with EFT? It looks like sharing in vulnerable ways your own feelings and being responded to in a way that gives you the sense that you are important and that you matter. So it's usually reparative. Absolutely. Thanks for that. My husband has a habit of bringing up old issues during new arguments. It can feel really frustrating and triggering. How do we move forward instead of going backward? Not uncommon at all, and there's a reason that happens. It's a behavior that is a part of the cycle that comes from something much deeper. So when I see couples bringing up old issues during arguments, oftentimes they're trying to have something be heard. Maybe they feel that they haven't been heard, and so they want to drill it home with new evidence. That's what I call that action tendency. That behavior is, okay, I'm bringing in my evidence, bringing up more evidence, and I'm just creating this list of evidence. So, and let me present the evidence to you so that finally maybe you can understand me, right? So it comes from a place of wanting to be heard, wanting to be understood, wanting to finally feel understood. And I know that it can feel really frustrating and triggering because you're thinking on your side, well, we're not even resolving this issue. Like, come on. How can we resolve anything if just this stuff keeps being brought up again and again and again? So how do you move forward instead of going backward? With EFT couples therapy, when you start to understand your pattern, you can start to understand where these behaviors are actually coming from. Like coming from this desire to feel heard, and that it's triggering to you because you want to also feel heard, right? And without knowing more about the situation, there's so much that goes beyond that. There's so much that's deeper there that is showing up in other arguments, this just starts to feel like a theme, which is another reason that these old arguments and issues are coming up when one argument is being had, is because the theme and the core issue is not resolved. And so it comes up when the next trigger comes up. And so you need to go towards the core issue and resolve it. There's no other way to do it. So thanks for that question. What can you do if one person wants to talk about everything, but the other person shuts down or avoids it? Yeah, so that is the pursue withdraw pattern, and it's the most common relationship pattern. And the good thing about it being so common is that we know how to treat it. This is actually what EFT was built to treat, is the pursue withdraw pattern and the many different iterations of it. So if this happens, it's again going to just be these same moves of a positive cycle that need to happen, which is the person who wants to talk about everything. They're what I would call a pursuer, what we call in EFT a pursuer. They, throughout EFT, have to learn how to soften and bring things up in a way that feels less threatening to their partner. And the person who shuts down, they need to learn how to engage, how to not turn away, but to look at their partner and say, I'm here, I'm listening. How are we addressing this together? So ultimately, that's what needs to happen. But how do you do that? It's, again, these moves of vulnerable sharing and responsiveness that need to happen to build safety so that you don't want to go to fight or flight. You don't want to go to fight. I want to talk about it. Let's go in like that. It's a form of the fight reaction. Or you don't want to go to flight, which is shutting down. So building that safety through those moves is how you address it. Okay, thanks for that one. What are some early warning signs that emotional distance is growing in a relationship? A feeling that there are parts of yourself that you cannot share and won't be accepted. That's an early warning sign that emotional distance is growing. And that if you continue to feel that way, that there are parts of yourself that you need to hide, and you continue hiding them, the emotional distance will grow. So thanks for that one. My partner is quite judgmental regarding therapy. How should I convince her? Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. Ask her what she's afraid of in a non-judgmental way. People are afraid of therapy for very legitimate reasons because of the things that we hear about therapy. And the top 3 things that people are most afraid of, if I can remember them correctly, I hope I can. One is that it's going to make things worse, that you go in there, you talk about your issues, you stop avoiding them, that it's going to make them worse. That's one of the fears. And the truth is, it doesn't. When you're avoiding stuff, it builds up. You know, what we resist persists. So when we are able to go towards something, that is actually how we resolve it. We cannot resolve it in another way. We cannot. So that's one of the fears. And another fear is that it won't help. You're going to waste your money. Hey, it could happen. It doesn't happen often. Most people, they get a lot out of couples therapy. Of course, there's not 100% success rate. There's so many different factors. But there's a pretty damn good chance it's going to help. And then the third fear is of social approval. So you have to tell your friends, you know, we're in couples therapy. What are they going to think? And with that one, let them think what they want. It's a good idea to go to couples therapy as soon as you notice a pattern. Get in there and break the pattern before it becomes self-reinforcing and takes over time. And then you're years down the road, and this pattern is much more ingrained than it had to be. Because on average, people wait 6 to 7 years of being unhappy in their relationship before they go to couples therapy. And I think it should be sooner. I think it should be one day. Why not? Go in there. Get it worked out. Then you have this sense of safety. And when you have this sense of safety, your relationship gets better and better over time because you're in the positive cycle of giving and giving and giving and giving. That's what a good relationship is. So, and it sounds like you're the one who wants to go to couples therapy, so maybe you know this. The question you asked is, how should I convince her? You can't convince her. What you can do is listen to her, see if you can address some of her fears. So sit and ask her, what do you think you're afraid of? And be really responsive to her. I'm sure that her fears come from a really legitimate place. Maybe she's had a bad experience in therapy in the past. Maybe she's heard about some things that didn't go well with somebody else, or maybe her fears just need to be heard by you. Maybe she's afraid that if you go to couples therapy, it means it's the end or something like that. So if you hear something like that, you can just respond to her in a way that says, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were afraid of that. I'm so sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do to just make you feel safer? Because I want to go to help our relationship. And I think that it could be really helpful. I don't want to pressure you. But I'm curious if there are ways that I can, in a way that feels safe for you, address your fears. What can I do? So that would be my advice. Can EFT bring back the lost spark in my relationship? Yes, it can. The spark is, when you think of the spark, it's like a sense of excitement. And it is excitement. It's exciting when you feel so loved and cared about and valued by somebody. In the early of a relationship, when everybody's trying to impress each other, that's oftentimes when people experience that kind of feeling valued, right? And then it can fade over time as people end up kind of going their separate ways. But with EFT, it can help you get to that connected place again where you're engaging with each other in that same way that makes you feel excited because you're having your emotional needs be met. Your emotional needs to feel valued, feel like you matter, feel loved. So when you get that back, that's what the spark is, in my opinion. Okay. What's the main goal of EFT? Is it about fixing communication or understanding emotions better? It is about both of those. It's about, but the broader thing it's about is creating secure attachment, which means creating a relationship that is a source of comfort, caring, a safe haven from the stresses of the outside world, that is a place that you know that you matter and you have a person you can count on and you have safety, and you're important to this person. And so it goes beyond just fixing communication, and it goes beyond just understanding emotions. Those are components of it. I think they're more of a result of having safety in your relationship, that you have better communication when you have safety in a relationship because you just feel good. You communicate when you feel better. You feel better towards this person. They feel better towards you. So your communication naturally changes, but not in a forced way, like a behavioral couples therapy method. Understanding your emotions better is a part of the change process because you start to understand what's at the root of your patterns so that you can address the core issues. Because when you're just talking about the girl at the party, you're not talking about the core issue of, I just want to know I'm important to you. I just want to know you want to be with me. So understanding emotions is a part of that, of getting to a place where you know how to address what's important and finally resolve things so that you stop having that fight over and over. So yeah, the main goal is secure attachment. So thanks for that question. Okay. And So I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I've had so much fun talking to y'all about this thing I have devoted my life to and that I love so much. So yeah, give me a follow on Instagram if you want to hear more. That's Dr. period Tasha TASHA period relationship period therapy. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on.